Welcome to the Ubrix video series. Today we're talking about 15-minute cities. The idea is simple. Everything you need for daily life should be within a 15-minute walk or cycle. Today I'm joined by Mark Copsey, who currently resides in the Netherlands and has a strong interest in decarbonisation and the future city design. Mark, before we dive into the topic, could you give a quick introduction into yourself and your background, please?
Okay, I'm a university lecturer in the Netherlands, having worked in universities in the UK, and I've lived in the UK, New Zealand, and the Netherlands. Involved in economic development for the last 40 years.
Brilliant. Yeah, so you've got a really holistic oversight as to kind of what's going on in different parts of the world, which is really interesting for us. So just to get started then, Mark, what does a 15-minute city mean to you?
Well, the key thing to me is that I don't use a car. I have a car which I use once a month, if that.
Mm-hmm.
So I can sometimes fill a car up and 3 months later off fuel, I might fill it up again. And so most of my life goes around on my bicycle. I cycle to the station, I cycle to the supermarkets, I shop by my bicycle, and I haven't used the car for doing a weekly shop for 3.5 years.
That blows my mind. I think we must go to the shop maybe twice a week in the car. So to not have to use a car for that long for your weekly shopping is just fantastic. I think in terms of that then, do you feel like it's really had an improvement on your quality of life having all of these facilities nearby?
It does, in the sense that I have to physically do things to get to the shops. So I cycle. On a Saturday, overall, because of the nature of where I go shopping, I will cycle about 20-25 kilometers on a Saturday, going to the various places that I go to. But they're all accessible, and I could do it really local if I wanted to, but I choose to do it that way to get the things that I want. And I end up cycling, as I said, 20 kilometers on a Saturday morning, as well as then during the week if I want to go to the station and so forth. So it does have a much better feel to it in terms of the fact that I can cycle and that everything is at hand if I wish to cycle or walk.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were living in the UK, would you ever cycle anywhere, or is this something new?
I cycle to the station.
Okay.
When I lived in Newcastle, as the easiest way of getting there. But in the UK, there was about 6 bike fences, if you like, where you could pin your bike to a Newcastle station. Here, there must be an acre of bicycles, and the biggest challenge I have is remembering where I put it, because if you go to a school in the Netherlands, there's like 5 or 6 rows of bicycles for all the school children who cycle to school. So in a sense, it's a little bit different, but I could never go to Tesco's on my bicycle because it was too far away. You're having to go out to a suburban or outside shopping area on the outside of the city that's not geared up to cycling, not geared up to more healthier living, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same for us where we are currently. It'd be about half an hour for us to get to the shops, probably about the same for the schools. So you do feel a little disconnected from your community, which is, I suppose, one of the benefits of the 15-minute city is you feel like you're more integrated in with your local community. So in terms of that then, what do you think are the social, economic, environmental benefits from adopting this kind of a model?
Well, I think the key thing is that we don't need to use the car as much.
Yeah.
Simple. We have more of a planned city where you think about the facilities for childcare, you think about the facilities for older people, you think about retail. And so forth. You have all these things all wrapped up into the planning process. And so that therefore, when they're building new developments, and there's a number in Eindhoven, The shops are always on the ground floor, and then there's apartments going up perhaps 3 or 4 stories above them, or 2 stories above them. So you tend to integrate parts of the community infrastructure with the residential infrastructure in a much greater extent than I've seen in the UK.
Yeah, speaking about apartments and things, do you think that maybe there's a bit of a cultural difference there, potentially a stigma assigned to apartments, terraced homes, etc., in the UK as opposed to the Netherlands?
There does seem to be, because lots of people live in apartment buildings in the Netherlands.
Okay.
Whichever city you go, even the smaller ones, there's small or larger apartment blocks, and that seems to be standard from that
Mm-hmm.
point of view. And then you have, if you like, the more terraced developments that go on, new terraces and old terraces of housing. So there does seem to be a far more communal base for some of the housing infrastructure that's built here, but they're always integrated with other facilities. They're not, you don't have a shopping area by itself,
Yeah.
not connected to anything else. There's always cycle paths to it. You can walk there and people live above it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I mean, even just talking from personal experience, so we have some apartments and some terrace homes on our development, and they're listed as affordable homes. So is the mentality, the attitude towards terraced and apartments in Europe very different to how it is in the UK, do you think?
Well, if I look at all the new developments I've seen around Eindhoven, all of them incorporate terraces. You don't
Hmm.
get if you like, the typical private sector driven housing estates
Okay.
that you see in the UK of separate, distinct houses. They're always part and parcel of a more community focus to
Hmm.
them. So I don't think I've seen detached houses being built for most people, shall we say. Okay, yes, there is some, there is a lot of it, but in a sense, not for the most people who tend to live in quite close proximity to each other.
Yeah. And in terms of that, then, do you think um, it's one of the things that are essential to creating that more communal feel? So the facilities and sort of in terms of living closely together, do you think that helps foster that community feel?
It depends. If I live in a street which has got multiple nationalities in the same street, but do I talk to them more than I did in Newcastle? Not necessarily,
Okay.
but the things are all at hand. So we
Hmm.
have community facilities, adult education facilities, sort of 2 blocks down. We've got shops are 1 block away and 2 blocks away. We've got schools. So we have all the facilities here, as well as access to the countryside and to play parks and facilities which are incredibly well used. If I look at the parks here, there tends to be activities on there most weekends, whereas in the UK, there'd be a park and it would just be a scrub of land to a
Yeah.
degree that wasn't well utilised. There
Hmm.
might be a kids' play area there, but not necessarily the same volume of people using it as I see here.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because we do have a park that's maybe about half an hour's walk away from us, but we don't use it because we have to get in the car. We could walk there, I suppose, but the mentality, it's too far away. Um
Yeah.
and I think maybe that's it, that again, that's just an attitude shift, isn't it? Potentially. So in terms of the facilities then, so when we're really thinking about it, what do you think are the most important? So we've kind of talked about shops, we've talked about parks and things. Is there anything else that you think should be included as part of these 15-minute cities?
Well, I think it's about all of the people that live in those communities. So it needs to be
Hmm.
facilities for young people. There need to be facilities for older people. There need to be
Hmm.
facilities for operating businesses and so
Yeah.
forth. So actually, all of these things are part of the community rather than thinking, well, the business takes place over there, retail's over there. You actually bring it all together so that actually
Yeah.
people connect in their daily lives as much as anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's maybe where Ubrix can come in. So we do help builders with digital tools, but beyond that, we also help with community management and things. So do you think tech potentially has a role in making these models work?
Well, I think in a sense it's part and parcel of how we can plan things better by thinking
Yeah.
about the facilities, the ability to change things quite quickly, because the planning process in the UK is very cumbersome and very long. I think it's
Hmm.
important to think about how do we connect with communities. I lived in an area where they were proposing to do one thing, and then they said, well, it rates the local plan we did. And when did you do that? 10 years before. And it doesn't seem to connect with people because a lot of people had left by then and new people had come in and no one knew
Yeah.
about it. So I think there's
Okay.
a matter of connection, and their technology can certainly provide a key aspect of that, of building and socializing what do we need in our community rather than feeling it's something that's done to us. Instead, it's done with us.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of going in a little bit deeper and not just making these plans for people, but including them into the plans, do you think would be beneficial? Is that right?
Certainly, I think that's a key aspect, is that it's your community. It's not done by somebody who's remote. Now, I think that's
Mhm.
always the intent within local plans, but I don't think we necessarily, the process takes too long, and we don't have the
Mhm.
level of engagement on a regular basis with people within the communities to see how it's going and making things happen. So we tend to think, I remember the structure plans in the local UK, which was 25 years long, and you designate certain areas and so forth. But it doesn't seem to be designed for community participation in an ongoing basis.
And in terms of that, then, do you think that's one of the biggest barriers to adoption over here in the UK? Or do you think that there's other factors at play, like planning, for example?
Well, I think I live in a town in effect which was used to be 5 settlements, and it's been brought together as a city as a result of the development of Phillips, in effect, about 100 years ago. And so you have these very much communities, and you have shops in a local community area. And rather than everything focused on the city centre, you get these shopping areas all around the city, which have got all the facilities you need rather than that. So I think that's a key aspect, is a mindset of thinking, how do we make sure that these facilities are available within the communities and within that 10-15 minute area around
Mhm.
around where people live.
Okay. And if you were advising a local council today, Mark, what do you think should be the first step?
I think the key thing is that we've got to talk to people. In essence, what
Hmm.
do people want for the area in which they live? What are the difficulties? What are the problems that exist? Because I can see that has been the key barrier. And you have the local plans, but they tend to be quite old and are done from a planning perspective rather than a people perspective. And certainly in mainland Europe, we tend to have far more community planning events, it seems to me, whereby you
Okay.
discuss and liaise with people about what is happening to their areas.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have to say that I don't think I've ever heard of any community planning initiatives. It's quite possible that I might have missed them. Um, I do know of one, not a residential one, but there's a hospital near us that the community have been considering closing and then rebuilding somewhere else. There have been a lot of objections to that. However, the building itself is huge and only a very small percentage of it is actually utilized. So really, when you think about it, it shouldn't really be more about, is it going to close? It should be, what can we do with potentially the building, or what can we do with the land that the building sits on, and come together as a community and try and figure that out between everybody that is in the local area. And do you think that that's the kind of thing that in mainland Europe discussions are being had around?
I tend to have that feel. You tend to have old sites where things are flattened, in effect. You take away what's there and you rebuild from afresh. In the UK, we've often left the older buildings up, which I think is wonderful. I think they're great buildings, but they tend to be at the vagrancies of the developers rather than necessarily the community that's going to benefit from those facilities once they're built. And I think it's that desire to bring people together which is critical.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Mark, thanks so much for sharing your insights. I think it's been really exciting to hear about all of the things that are going on over there. It's really interesting to me to hear about the communities that actually work on a day-to-day over in the Netherlands. I feel like we've kind of lost that a little bit. I don't know whether you'd agree. In the UK, as we were kind of talking before the video, we touched on detached homes being more of the norm these days, and we've had these local services start to being stripped out of the communities where they're built. So it's more new build estates go up. There's no shops, there's no GP, there's no schools, etc. And families are left completely dependent on the car. And myself, we do have to walk quite a distance in order to get to any of these facilities. But when we're really thinking about it, and we have kind of touched on this during our conversation, it's not just about the convenience. It's about health, it's about well-being yourself. You're saying that you cycle 25 kilometers. That's huge. That's something that most people, I would say, in the UK don't necessarily do. I myself, I don't even own a bike. So I think it's about bringing health, but also about bringing communities together. And then as a result, physical health improves, mental health improves. When there's green spaces on a development, it makes a huge difference. When we're thinking about isolation with older residents and things, which we touched on, it's a huge issue in communities today. But if there's a hub, that if there's a central place that people can go to, that might be a problem that could be solved. So I think just to summarize then, I think the challenge for developers is potentially just to think a bit differently. So thinking for the future in the same way that the guys over in the Netherlands do, planning for communities to develop, to age, to change, to support healthier lifestyles. We give builders the digital tools to do that through Ubrix, and hopefully with a little bit of education and things, we can help in manage that a bit better than we're currently doing now.
I completely agree. I think I wouldn't want you to take away that I'm typical, because I'm not, I think. I
Yeah,
could do all of my shopping within a 10-minute bicycle ride and therefore travel 3 kilometers. So, but it's a choice that I make, but it's part of that desire for that healthier living, if you like, in terms of
absolutely.
my facilities. But certainly I think it's important to think about how do we create communities, because planning is so critical to creation of communities, because we create the infrastructure for engagement.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. And I completely echo your sentiments as well. And I think down the line, it would be great to pick this up and see if anything's moving forward over here in the UK, if we're kind of learning from the lessons from over there. So thanks so much for your time, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.